There was always that doubt in the background that he could be just the unluckiest guy in the world.
62-year-old convicted murderer Karlsen wants you to believe he's guilty of nothing more than having bad luck.
It appeared that tragedy was stalking Karl Karlsen.
His horses died, his wife died, his son died.
The truck fell on my stepson. Justice crushed. His chest was crushed.
This was an accident. Karl was just so traumatized by it.
There had been a fire at my sister's house, and my sister did not make it out.
His first instinct was to save his children.
He must have been devastated.
It killed me.
But is Karlsen's misfortune a cover for something more sinister?
Christina's family was suspicious.
Karl was horrible with money.
Unfortunately, when Karl Karlsen needs money, people have accidents.
Levi had a life insurance policy.
Over $700,000.
I don't believe in coincidence. Do you?
I've been given 1 hour with Karlsen, come and sit down, who says he was forced into a confession.
There's something about Levi that haunts you, Karl. I know it does.
The interview lasted for 10 hours.
I didn't kill my son.
Absolutely, he maintains his innocence. But this man saw his family members as a meal ticket.
He told me she's a crispy critter.
He doesn't kill them with his bare hands. He doesn't stab them. He doesn't shoot them. He creates a hazardous situation and then sits back and lets the situation kill them.
Can Karl convince me of his innocence? My question for you is this, Karl. Are you the world's unluckiest human being, or are you a ruthless killer? Karl, how are you?
How are you, sir?
Piers Morgan.
Karl.
In the 90s, Karl Karlsen's family home in Murphy's, California, burns to the ground. His 3 children thankfully survive, but his wife, Christina, does not. 29 years pass before a jury rules that this wasn't a tragic accident, but premeditated murder. Karlsen had set the fire to kill his wife. But he says he's innocent. Karl, thank you for agreeing to see me. You've been in prison for how long now?
Almost 10 years.
What's that been like for you?
You know, it's tough mentally. And especially knowing that I'm trying to get people to listen.
Did you ever think you'd end up
Never.
in prison, potentially for the rest of your life?
Never, never.
What do you hope to achieve with the interview?
To prove that, number one, I'm innocent. Number two, that I didn't get a fair trial.
What age were you when you met Christina, your first wife?
I was 23. I mean, she was beautiful. I mean, she really was. And personality that you don't find. She really saw the best in people.
So you were properly in love with each other?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Were you a good husband, do you think, to her?
Looking back, I worked a lot. We can always be better.
Karl was not happy in Murphy's. He wanted to go back to New York, and my sister had told him, we're not going to go back to New York unless you have a job with benefits. So Karl was stuck in Murphy's, whether he wanted to be there or not. So there was definitely issues in the house.
Tell me about this awful day when you had this tremendous fire at the house.
Started off New Year's Day, and was out at the barn in the garage.
So they were all in the house and you were outside?
Correct.
Okay.
And it was a short time later that I heard Karl Holger Karlsen get the kids.
Karl Karlsen was unable to access the house because the flames had consumed so much of it already. Karl then decided to save his children from the outside of the home and heroically broke the window and was able to reach in and grab them and pull them out to safety.
And all this while, it's like I'm not hearing the wife, so I figure, okay, she must have went out a different way. There's a back door.
You assumed your wife had escaped.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're assuming she's alive. There was no help me, I'm trapped. There's no I'm screaming in pain or anything.
Christina Karlsen's attempts to flee to safety were basically done to no avail. She tragically died inside of the bathroom.
How did you feel when you knew Christina was dead?
Devastated. It's your wife. Still love her to this day.
And what state were you in?
My reaction was just total blank. It's like I couldn't comprehend that she didn't get out.
He saved his 3 children. He went toward the burning house. And there was actually an article written about him in the local paper back in California, praising him as this hero.
Once you knew your wife was dead, you moved quite quickly to New York. What was that decision about?
Well, it was, where am I going to stay? Because my father-in-law said I could stay with him. Every day I would have to look at him and think, he lost his daughter and I didn't save her. How do you do that? So my dad was like, come on home, get things settled down a little bit, and then we'll go from there. And it's
a cynical person, and I'm not taking a view about this, but a cynical person would say the other reason you might not want to be with your father-in-law is because he killed his daughter.
Yeah, I mean, you could sit there and say that, but I mean, him and I, he still, even after she passed away, he would come out to New York to visit.
Right.
That wasn't a permanent thing. We didn't know what we were going to do.
Karl and the kids are gone. They didn't tell us. They didn't say anything to the family like, we're going to go back to New York. My mom and her husband had to chase them down at the airport to say goodbye to the grandkids.
Christina's family was suspicious about the fire that resulted in her death. Many of them didn't trust Karlsen. Many of them felt that he was not sufficiently grieving enough for her death.
You didn't go to the funeral. Why was that?
Well, they didn't even call me and tell me when they were burying her.
Well, why would they exclude you?
I don't know.
You must have a feeling for it.
No, because there was no reason.
It's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. I mean,
well, this is what I said. It's like, and now all of a sudden it's like after this all goes down, they're like, I'm the bad guy.
Wouldn't it be easier for you and your conscience? Did you just say, you know what? I did this, and actually I should stay in prison?
That would be the lie.
Would it?
100%. Because I got the evidence to prove otherwise.
But so how does it feel if you didn't do it and you're sitting here as a convicted killer?
It's the worst thing you can imagine.
The house fire in California is officially recorded as accidental. Karlsen receives a huge insurance payout. This wouldn't be the last time a terrible misfortune would bolster Karlsen's bank balance. When your wife died, it turned out that you'd taken out a life insurance policy.
Correct.
And it paid out to you $200,000,
yes. And
which in today's money is nearly $500,000. Be the equivalent.
Oh.
You were the only beneficiary of that.
Right. And then...
And what people are curious about is you took out that policy 19 days before the fire.
Right, but we had been in talks with the insurance company for probably 4 or 5 months.
Right. But you understand why people...
Yeah, you can sit there and look at it that way.
Yeah.
But I had no debts.
Right. So just a coincidence.
Yeah. Yes, I collected insurance money. What did I buy with it? A house for my kids. I didn't go get an 18-year-old girlfriend. I struggled to rebuild a whole life again. I was a single father for years.
After the fire, Karlsen moves his 3 children, Erin, Katie, and Levi, nearly 3,000 miles across the country to be close to his family in Seneca County, New York State. 2 years later, he finds love again. You rebuild your life, and at a line dancing club, you meet Cindy, your second wife.
Correct.
What was that like for you to find love again?
It was a little bit of fresh air because being a single parent is tough. being a guy, single parent, is tough. Thinking, okay, you know, you got to find somebody that's going to want to jump in and accept 3 kids.
First time I met Karl, he pretty much told me his story of how his first wife died in a fire and that he had 3 children and he was raising them by himself. And I just really felt sorry for him.
The kids took to her very well, and things were going good.
I think it was a change of pace for them, and we pretty much bonded. It was a little bit harder, I think, for Levi because, there's 2 sisters and he's the only brother. I believe he was, mama's boy, and he loved his mother and missed her terribly.
Karlsen had been married to Cindy, his second wife, for 15 years, when one day in November 2008, tragedy would strike the Karlsen family again.
911, what have your emergency?
I think I need an ambulance.
Okay, what's going on?
Karlsen and his wife Cindy were attending a funeral. Levi, he was working on the car at the Karlsen ranch, and he was alone.
We pulled into the driveway, and I saw that Levi's truck was still in the same spot. And I went in the house, and it wasn't long after that Karl came and was banging on the kitchen window hysterically, telling me to call 911.
The truck fell on my stepson.
The truck fell on your stepson?
And we just got home, and I don't think he's alive.
Cindy knew Levi was dead the minute she saw him.
He's pinned underneath the truck?
Yeah, my husband's lifting up the truck. Honestly, I don't think he's alive.
Levi's chest was completely concave.
Oh, my God.
Is he breathing?
No.
He is not breathing. Okay.
No.
I find him under the truck, jack it up, and get him out. The wife's there, neighbor's there, and we both pick up the shirt, and his chest is just crushed.
Okay, we're going to start CPR, okay?
Oh, they want to start CPR. Do you know CPR? His chest is crushed.
It was just one of the worst things that I'd ever witnessed, It was just horrible.
When the paramedics arrive, Karl is now banging his head against the garage walls. He's hysterical. He can't be consoled that he's lost his son.
He must have been devastated.
It killed me. I cried like a baby out in the barn. Anybody will tell you.
Karl was just so traumatized by it.
From an outside observer, it appeared that tragedy was stalking Karl Karlsen. That nearly 20 years prior, his wife had tragically died. And now in 2008, his son had tragically died.
Shortly after Levi died, Karl had come from town. He had a letter, an envelope in his hand, and he had said Levi had a life insurance policy. And I said, what? It seems strange to me that, a 23-year-old would have a life insurance policy.
17 days before his death, you take out an insurance policy.
Well,
you did, right?
I'm not taking out. This is. The way you're wording it is.
Okay.
I did not.
How would you categorize it?
I would say he took it out.
And how much did he pay out?
It was a $400,000 policy with $300 accidental.
So $700,000.
Correct.
Who was the beneficiary if he died?
I was.
Okay.
But I
Well, hang on. You said you were going to give the money to Levi's 2 daughters. I mean, how much of the $700,000 did you end up spending yourself?
Not much at all.
I mean, there was a duck farm, I believe you started, right?
Yeah, but that was before he died. I had my own retirement. My farm was paid off 2 years prior to Levi dying. My vehicles were paid off.
Karl was horrible with money. I mean, it seemed like he spent and would worry about bills later. As time went on, some of the statements would come through and the numbers didn't look right. I realized that the money that he got from the insurance, it was never meant for Levi's daughters.
He was slowly draining all of the money out of those annuities and policies that he had set up for the girls.
Things aren't adding up. I thought, could Karl have killed Levi?
Karlsen wants me to believe that the death of his son Levi was just another in a series of terrible tragedies. 3 homes, 2 cars, and a barn housing Karl's prized rare breed horses all went up in flames. In total, 6 seemingly tragic accidents have one thing in common: Karl Karlsen. Why? Why are you so damn unlucky, Karl?
Yeah, but did you ever see my medical records?
Answer my question.
No,
why are you so unlucky?
It's just...
Huh?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I know people that had a house fire, rebuilt their kitchen, and a week later, after it's done, the house burns down again.
And when your bad luck normally correlates with a massive payout from an insurance company, I'm doing the math, and it stinks.
We did for amongst ourselves that Karl Karlsen is a man that was into get-rich-quick schemes. He had this idea that he was going to sell gourmet ducks to Oriental restaurants downstate.
He was going to be this incredible millionaire, but he messed it up.
He was the type of man that if you gave him 20, he'd spend 40. At one point, he had thousands of ducks and no buyers. So then he kills all the ducks personally and just leaves them to rot out on the farm. And then in the early 2000s, the fire that killed those horses.
I think you've deliberately done all these things for money. I don't think any of it mattered to you. Your favorite horses, they had to go. Your car, up it goes.
I lost money. Let's look at it this way. The barn I got $60,000 for. The estimated loss was $365,000. Who burned something down for a loss?
I think you'd burn anything down, Karl.
For a loss?
I think you'd burn cars, barns. Yeah. Your life unraveled when Cindy, your second wife, suddenly starts to do her maths and starts to think, hang on a second, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong.
I started thinking, well, could Karl have done the barn fire? And why would Karl kill Ginger, his prized mare? She meant a lot to him. So it took me a while of learning who Karl is and was to realize that, he had done these horrible things. I was living in fear and looking over my shoulder, and I had to sleep in the same bed with him, which was horrible. I kept scissors and pepper spray underneath the mattress, in case something happened in the night.
She's desperate to go to the police, but the investigator keeps telling her, it's not enough evidence. You can't do that yet. You've got to wait.
Cindy decides to take matters into her own hands. On 3 separate occasions, she secretly records her conversations with Karl. And finally, he admits he had a hand in Levi's death.
I had a voice recorder. I stuck it in my bra. One thing he told me is he had realized he forgot to put the blocks under the truck. And if he'd have done that, the truck wouldn't have fallen on Levi. So basically, he's like, it's my fault, it happened, and I feel horrible. I feel so guilty.
Even though the recordings are barely audible, they're enough to persuade the police to investigate. They put a wire on her in the hope that she can trap Karl into repeating his confession. But by now, he's getting suspicious.
I asked you if you pushed the truck, and you said yes.
I didn't push the truck, I said I had nothing to do, but I said I took advantage of the situation once it happened. And that is exactly what I said to you.
Karl, you told me that you didn't set it up that way, but when you were in there, you saw the opportunity.
No, after it had happened, then I panicked and saw the opportunity. That's exactly what I said to you.
But what did you mean by what we heard you say?
So the thing is
what did you mean about opportunity?
I'm getting that.
She's accused you of deliberately killing your son.
But she has.
And your response is, I didn't do it deliberately because you feared you were being set up here. So you didn't want to incriminate yourself. But then you say this strange thing, Karl, which I can't get my head around.
Yeah, but
what does it mean to make an opportunity from your son's tragic death?
Well, you're just trying to give her enough. I don't know. I really don't.
Explain to me.
Well, you're trying to give her a little ammunition to see where she's going to go with this, because I have no clue what.
What does that mean?
Well, you're trying to see what she's going to do.
It's an unbelievable thing to say. I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Any man who can say his son's death is an opportunity and admits that that's despicable and horrible, I'm asking myself right now, what else are you capable of?
You see the interview.
There's something about Levi that haunts you, Karl. I know it does.
And you see them trying again and again to trap Karl.
What kind of father are you?
Piece of shit.
Exactly.
They're unable to do it.
We were ready to go to trial. We were confident we were going to get a conviction.
Here's the bottom line. I don't believe you. You're bullshitting me like you bullshit everybody else.
I didn't kill my son.
Let me ask you one question. What do you regret about all this?
Everything.
Right.
Trusting people. Trusting an ex-wife.
Cindy collected enough evidence against her husband, allowing detectives to bring him in for questioning.
You guys don't know what happened that day.
Tell us about it.
10 grueling hours, Karlsen was asked about his son's death. Levi had been working underneath a truck, which had fallen and killed him.
Oh my God. Justice Christ.
Ruled an accident at the time, detectives now believed Karlsen had a hand in it.
There's something about Levi that haunts you, Karl. I know it does.
Anything he could do to wiggle out of this, he did for 10 hours.
What are you going to do for me?
I'm going to stand up and say this wasn't premeditated, cold-blooded murder, that it was just something that happened. Shit happens sometimes, Karl.
But there came a point where finally Karl broke down and started to cry and said,
I opened the truck door.
Okay.
You know, it was an accident. It was an accident.
And if I had hit the fucking box underneath it, it wouldn't have happened.
Karl, it was an accident, so why'd you try and hide it?
I let him down. I walked away. And I lived with that for 4 years.
Karlsen was charged with murder as a result of that interrogation.
You left your son there dying when you could have helped him. You could have come to his aid. You could have saved him. Did you call 911 for help?
I did.
Did you call for help?
No. And
so he needed help, and you don't give him help? What kind of father are you?
Piece of shit.
Exactly. I need to put on a show to make it so nobody knows it happened. No problem. Everybody buys it. The police buy it. Cindy buys it. I get my $700,000 policy.
Karl Karlsen entered a guilty plea in New York the day before the trial. I have to admit I was a little disappointed. We were ready to go to trial. We were confident we were going to get a conviction.
Karl pled guilty to second-degree murder. He said, I caused the truck to fall on my son because I jumped in it and it tipped over. And then rather than saving him and getting him out from under the truck, I left him there, knowing that he would die.
The judge went over the elements of the crime with Karl, and I'll have to tell you, it was pretty creepy listening to him because he showed about as much emotion as somebody talking about the weather.
You received a sentence based on your admission
Right.
of second-degree murder
Right.
of your own son.
Right.
I mean, you did that.
Right. Oh,
As you know.
I agree I did that.
So now your position is that you made all that up.
Yes. I didn't kill my son.
So how does it feel if you didn't do it and you're sitting here as a convicted killer
I
of your
wish
son?
I never would have taken the lawyer's advice and took a plea.
I don't get why
You know
you
what
would
my
do
lawyer
this?
told me the first day you met me? He goes, this is a heater case. A heater case is so high profile, it doesn't matter what you say or do, you're going to lose.
To play devil's advocate
Oh.
with you. And just to try and get to the truth here.
Yep.
But, people have said that the only reason you took that plea was because you were facing life without parole.
Yeah.
And you took a plea which maybe gave you 15 years.
Well, and then plus the one thing, like I say, you never get, when you take a plea, you never get your right to appeal. You never get your right to challenge your conviction.
But you understand why some people think you deliberately took the plea and made the confession to get a short sentence.
I can understand that 100%. But many people do take a plea to get a lesser sentence. When you're facing life or 15 years, you're going to take the 15 because you know you can do 15. It's terrible. But here's
it is terrible, yeah.
But here's the thing.
It's terrible, but
with my son,
you think it's terrible because it's unfair.
No, I think it's terrible.
I look at all the evidence. I look at all the. I mean, you've claimed $1 million.
No.
In insurance claims. Here's the bottom line. I don't believe you. You're bullshitting me like you bullshit everybody else.
Well,
I don't.
I started to see what I thought was a pattern between Levi's death and Christina Karlsen's death. They were different, no doubt. But when you look at it, there's also similarities.
There's no reason he couldn't have got to that bathroom. No reason.
I think his intent was to stand there and watch the whole house burn up, and not just his wife.
Not one of his family members meant anything to him.
He told me she's a crispy critter.
I get that you think you're the world's unluckiest man.
No, but
I'm just looking at it all thinking you're not unlucky. This is all deliberate.
But the evidence proves
everyone that was around you was unlucky.
Why does it
Your wife was unlucky.
Why does the coroner to this...
Son was unlucky.
Hold on.
Your horses were unlucky.
But you're not answering my question. I can say I'm sitting...
It's not my job to answer your questions. It's your job to answer mine. You were convicted of murdering your wife. That you had cold-bloodedly planned... Well, hang on. Had planned the murder of your wife. And by doing so, you could have killed all your children as well.
Yeah, if I was in it for the money, wouldn't I have done that?
Well, I don't know. After Karlsen pleads guilty to the second-degree murder of his son Levi, in California, prosecutors reopened the case into the house fire that had killed his first wife, Christina, 22 years before. There was one witness to that fire who could have told them what happened that day. That witness, his son Levi, who was nearly 6 at the time.
There's no doubt that Karl had another motive besides money to kill Levi.
I always suspected that Levi knew something about the day of the fire that he just didn't want to talk about.
Was my father not going to save my sisters? That's the question that's going through this kid's mind.
I think that Levi got himself out of the fire, and I think only because Levi got out, it forced Karl to get the girls out. I think his intent was to stand there and watch the whole house burn up, and not just his wife. I think his intent was to see his kids go too, and to collect not just one life insurance policy. I think he intended to collect on 4.
He started to think, what if Levi knows this? Why let a witness be there living? He's almost 6 years old at that time. He knows. And as Levi got older, he started to worry.
Karl wanted to remove the one person that really had the key to really what had happened.
You took out insurance on the kids as well?
Yes. And Christina was the beneficiary to them. So if anything happened to them, only she would get the money.
But on her death in this fire, you got $200,000 to you. You were the only beneficiary of that.
Right.
The fire that kills Christina starts in the afternoon. The kids have been put down for a nap, and Christina is taking a bath. Investigators then discover burn marks in the remains of the house that indicated the fire was deliberately set to trap the family.
The most important evidence on this fire is an immediate pour of kerosene outside the girl's bedroom door and outside the bathroom door, and that it was ignited on purpose. I was positive that the spill pattern was deliberate.
If you are talking about an accidental spill of kerosene, what you should see is just a center, puddle of kerosene, but that's not what we have.
Christina Karlsen was unable to escape. She was unable to escape chiefly because the only way out of that bathroom was the bathroom window. The same bathroom window that had been boarded up.
The investigators established that kerosene had been deliberately poured shortly before the fire.
Here's the problem with that.
You don't believe that?
No, not at all. We did have a spill of kerosene. We had a kerosene heater that was broke. We cleaned it up days before. After the spill, yes, you smelled a little kerosene in the air, but we saturated it with so much water, it wouldn't burn in a million years.
Had that bathroom window not been boarded up, she'd have got out, right?
Yeah, but it would have taken more time to open the window than it would to pull the board off.
Right.
So,
out of interest, when was that window boarded up?
It was like a week, maybe less. And the thing is that it's easily to come off. You've got adrenaline. Your kids are there. Why not get out of the tub? She only needed seconds to get to the window or seconds to get to the door. Why did she do neither? We don't know.
That door is here, and kerosene got spilled here. That's where they presume it started.
I went out to the house the next day, and as I'm looking around, there was an axe there. So if Karl really had wanted to do something to get my sister out, he had a tool that could have knocked the boards out.
Why he didn't knock this out? He should have knocked that out. There's no way she could have pulled it off. There's no reason he couldn't have got to that bathroom. No reason.
Do you wish with hindsight you'd smashed your way in?
Yeah, but then you look at it another way, it would be the worst thing I could do.
Why?
Because what would happen if I died in it too?
You could have gone in. There are people who I know for a fact, if that was their wife, they'd have broken into the house.
Some people would, some people wouldn't.
Karl, let me assume for a moment you're telling me the truth, which I don't think you are. But let's assume your version of events is right. You've been oddly oddly unemotional about the deaths of your wife and son in this interview. So here's your chance. How did it feel?
Is me sitting here crying going to give me any sympathy? No. I didn't get a fair trial in California. I didn't do it. That's facts.
What's facts is you sitting here as a convicted murderer.
That's right. But why hasn't the death certificate...
The murder of your wife and the second-degree murder
Why hasn't the death certificate ever been admitted in the court?
Why are you sitting here for double murder of a wife and son? What you can't disprove is the timing of these insurance policies being taken out and the deaths of your wife and son where you are the sole beneficiary. Twice is not a coincidence. Not when it involves your wife and son.
Right.
When Christina died, Colette told Karl she wanted to see her sister's body.
I told Karl that I wanted to see Chris. I said, I want to see my sister. And he said, you can't. And I asked him, why not? And he told me she's a crispy critter. And that was how he explained the death of my sister to me.
I think that's the real Karl. I think very few people see that.
Murderers. As illogical as they may seem to the normal person, there's something behind it, right? Here, there's nothing behind it other than money. Karl looked at his family members as a meal ticket.
You're a killer, aren't you?
No.
You're not the unluckiest man in the world.
Well,
You're a ruthless killer.
Not one of his family members meant anything to him.
He doesn't kill them with his bare hands. He doesn't stab them. He doesn't shoot them. He creates a hazardous situation and then sits back and lets the situation kill them.
6 years after Karlsen pleads guilty to murdering his son Levi, he is convicted of the first-degree murder of his wife Christina. Should he manage to serve out his time in New York State, he knows he'll spend the remainder of his life in a prison in California. You're a killer, aren't you?
No.
I think you've deliberately done all these things for money. For money. I think you killed your wife for money. I think you killed your son for money. God knows what would have happened to your grandchildren who you took life insurance out to make another fast buck.
Here's my thing.
That's why you're sitting here. That's why you're here.
I'm sitting
That's
here.
why you won't be getting out.
You're talking about an individual who has the capacity to kill his own offspring and a woman that he professes that he loved for money. And that's because Karl's a psychopath. He doesn't have any feelings of remorse.
Your two granddaughters at your sentencing, they had victim impact statements read by Christina's sister, Colette. And I've got them here. Just want to get your reaction. Electra was 10, and she wrote, "Karl, you are the worst grandfather. I bet you don't know what love, kind, or kindness means. P.S. I hope you pay the price." And then Ivy, who was 8, and she wrote, "Dear Judge, I don't want Karl to get out of jail because I don't want him ruining my life like he did to Daddy." From Ivy Karlsen. When you hear that,
It hurts.
what did you feel at the time? These are your granddaughters.
I don't remember ever hearing that.
That was their victim statement.
But
You don't remember it?
I don't remember it.
How could you forget that?
Believe me, everything's such a blur when you're in the court. You know,
That wouldn't be etched on your mind forever?
you have to get tough skin.
He was calling me from the jail during the trial. He was telling me that, "Did you see the jurors? They look so scraggly. What about the one with that big ass? What, do they wear clothes from Walmart?" And it's so bizarre.
After he got arrested, he, was still writing to me. He wanted me to help him, convince people that he was innocent. Why does he think I would help him? I'm the one that got him arrested.
After he was arrested, Aaron Karlsen, his oldest daughter, she meets her father in the visitation room, and the first thing he says to her is, "Wow, you look just like your dead mother, especially your boobs."
He's just a deranged individual.
You're not the unluckiest man in the world.
Well,
You're a ruthless killer, and you've done it for cash. And they finally caught up with you. They finally caught up with you. And when they caught up with you because on your son, you just got it wrong and made it too obvious, and the payout was too big. That's not a coincidence, Karl.
Why?
That's a guy who gets so greedy, he does too much.
I hope prison life is horrible for Karl, to be honest.
Anything you would like to say, Mr. Karlsen? Any apologies?
It doesn't hurt for him to feel some misery for the harm that he's caused others.
Look, Karl, in the end, it's a tragedy for you that you went down that road, and it's a bigger tragedy for the people whose lives you took. And I just hope you can live with your conscience. And my advice to you would be, at some stage, stop kidding yourself, stop playing this game of pretending this is all some gigantic coincidence and you're just really unlucky, and just come clean. Your families might have more respect for you if you did actually tell the truth.
I'm not going.
That's all, Karl.
After the plea.
All right, listen, I've got to leave it there.
All right.
But thank you for your time.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that was the end of that interview with Karl Karlsen, who wants us all to think he's just the world's most unlucky person. And he continues to protest his innocence. But when you look at the cavalcade of incidents here, you can only reach one conclusion. Karl Karlsen is not unlucky, he's evil.
I'm Emily Campagno. As a lawyer, I've spent many hours with convicted felons inside the walls of prisons. Those are conversations and experiences you never forget. Now, Piers Morgan is joining me here in a slightly less intense environment to take you inside the killer interview. Karl Karlsen.
Yes.
His horses died, his wife died, his son died. What was your reaction when he called himself the unluckiest man in the world?
Well, I knew that Karl Karlsen wasn't an unlucky person. He was a cold-hearted, very sadistic mass killer of people that he loved or purported to love. And not just people, but prize horses or cars that got torched, or pretty much anything he could think of that he could take an insurance policy out on and then claim the money. And he didn't care if it was a wife or a son or a horse or a car. If you were in his orbit and he could get money on insurance, you were dead.
What are your thoughts on greed as a motive?
I think there are lots of motivations for murder. Some of the biggest ones are obvious. Passion can be a motivation for murder. But greed is a particularly awful one. That people would be driven to kill someone not because of emotions or because of gang rivalry or because of whatever it may be, but purely for money. That they would kill people, even people that they were married to, or a child that they brought into the world, that they would kill them for insurance money. It's unspeakable. There's a particular vileness about greed being a motivating factor for murder, I think.
And did you experience anything in your interaction with him while you shook his hand, anything that alerted you to such a vile, insidious quality about him?
I knew from the moment he sort of bounded in, quite chirpy, quite confident, that he was utterly convinced that he was going to persuade me he was just this really unlucky guy. And really unlucky. His wife died in a house fire. His son falls under a truck. His horses all die in a house, in a barn fire. His cars all get torched. Just one thing after another. God, what about that, huh? He genuinely thought that he could sit there spewing this crap to me and I was just going to fall for it. And there was a moment, as there is with a lot of these interviews, when I'm kind of, just engage with them and get the story and get enough in the can for a show. And then I switch. And then I go into, I don't believe a word you've been telling me. And in that moment, with him in particular, you could see the blood run out of his face. Because until then he's thinking, maybe he's persuading me. And this is good for him. And then I just looked him in the eye and went, I don't believe a word you're saying. And from that moment, it obviously becomes a very different interview. It becomes more contentious. He's much more defensive. And then by the end, he was just angry and stomped off.
Did you feel he wanted to please you, or did he see you as an arbiter representative of greater society?
No, Karlsen is just the world's biggest bullshitter. And he just thought he could bullshit me into oblivion, and I would just believe him.
Do you believe he would have kept engaging in these insidious acts with insurance and murder if he hadn't been caught?
I have absolutely no doubt Karlsen would have carried on insuring people and things and killing or destroying them for financial gain for as long as he lived. It was an obsessive greed and desire to just make as much money as he could, and he didn't care who died or what got torched in the process.
It has all the makings of a Hollywood murder mystery, and it's all set in the backdrop of one of New York's most elite getaways.
In October 2001, Ted Ammon, one of East Hampton's wealthiest residents, is found bludgeoned to death in the master bedroom of his mansion.
This whole story is sort of like a Grimm's fairy tale. A rich man is murdered. He had a beautiful wife who was carrying on with her handsome electrician.
The main suspect, a blue-collar electrician, Danny Pelosi.
An antisocial criminal personality who takes no responsibility for anything that he does.
I'm not a mean guy. I'm an idiot.
Is Danny Pelosi a murderer?
The evidence was starting to point to Danny and to Generosa together. They had the motive, the means and the opportunity.
I made a dumb choice in protecting Generosa's children from the truth.
But was Danny a fool guy left to take the rap for a crime he didn't commit?
I asked Generosa her version. And know what she told me? Ted got exactly what he deserved.
Dan would do anything for Generosa, including going to jail.
Imagine being me.
For the last 18 years, Pelosi has never stopped trying to clear his name. Now he says he has evidence which will prove he's innocent. If that's all true, that exonerates you of any involvement.
I'm going to get the truth out there, and I'm going to walk out of here any day. It's going to happen. How you doing?
Danny, good to see you.
Dan Pelosi.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Dan Pelosi is a character.
I don't want to look mean.
He's still upbeat. He's still friendly. He still smiles. He still laughs. He's a good talker.
My attorney said I talked to a lampshade. I'm not a mean guy. I'm an idiot.
I've always felt that Dan was set up.
Yeah. You know, last time I signed papers like this, they told me that I signed myself out of the will. Are you sure you're not signing me out of the will again?
Do I think he's ever going to get out of jail? No. Dan was the perfect fall guy.
You're here to expose the truth?
Definitely. I know you've got a lot you want to say.
I hope you guys wrote plenty of tape. So we do this.
Okay, good. Yeah. Pelosi claims he has evidence that points to who killed investment banker Ted Ammon. Will it be enough to convince me he's innocent and that he's just the fall guy set up by his rich lover, Generosa? Danny, thank you for seeing me.
No problem.
And happy birthday for yesterday.
Yeah, 18 years in here.
What has that been like for you?
It's not what it's been like for me, it's what it's been like for my family. Never in 1,000 years did I believe I'd be sitting here today. By protecting Generosa, I made a really bad choice in my life. Generosa is why I'm here.
Did you ever actually love her or not?
I fell in love with her. It wasn't until after the murder that I saw many faces of Generosa Ammon.
Generosa Ammon wasn't your typical Park Avenue matron. She was very ambitious for herself. She had a lot of spirit, and she was quite belligerent. Came to New York to be a real estate agent. It's a classic profession for women who are husband hunting. Ted Ammon was a master of the universe type. He was an investment banker, self-made, multi-millionaire. They started dating and they wound up married, tragically for him.
The first moment you met Generosa, what was your first impression?
She was a rich, wealthy, snotty bitch. She threw me off of her job the first day I met her. She said I was rude.
This was an apartment in Manhattan, right?
She had purchased a $12 million building, and she decided to renovate it to turn it into a home. I'm like, I could gut this place, make $100,000 in a week.
When they split up, Ted Ammon had purchased a townhome on East 86th Street in New York City for Generosa and given her a set sum of money to do the renovations.
But when was the moment when you realized you could also not just make money as her employee, but you could make money as a lover?
Well, that's another story. She calls me over to her hotel. She was living in the stay-at home. And she's like, Danny, I want to talk to you business. I'd like to spend some time with you. I'll put you up for tonight. And when I come upstairs, she's like, I haven't had sex in over 2 years. Would you be with me? I was like, we can't go here. I said, I don't want to lose this job. And she says, well, what if I told you I was going to fire you? I went, come in.
You kissed her.
That was the beginning of the end.
He hit the lotto because he saw this very, very wealthy woman who was clearly extremely vulnerable and was desperately looking to get back at her ex-husband. So Danny Pelosi quickly inserted himself into Generosa's life and then into her bedroom.
She's in the bedroom waiting for me. She had a body that was tight and right. The only thing that was wrong was I was so worried about losing my job. Mr. Johnson decided he wasn't going to cooperate with me that evening. And this was something that never happened to me before. I was humiliated. And then I seen a side of this woman that I never saw before.
What was that?
A tender little girl trapped in a woman's body. She wasn't this shrewd, arrogant woman she was in public. I fell in love with that woman. The next morning, Mr. Johnson decided he was happy, and we had a beautiful morning, and that was the beginning.
They had an affair. He divorced his wife for Generosa and then stayed with Generosa.
Generosa could be with Dan Pelosi, this working class guy, and essentially throw it in Ted's face.
So what had charmed Ted Ammon about Generosa to begin with, her belligerence and her feistiness, wound up repelling him eventually, and divorce proceedings ensued.
The Ammon divorce was very, very bitter. You know, they were fighting over money, they were fighting over the children. It was really, really a horrible divorce.
She started bringing me to her divorce proceedings. She started bringing me to court. She buys me a wardrobe. She buys me clown suits. She bought me suits for $3,000 to $5,000 to $7,000 each. She was flaunting me in front of Ted. I met Ted. I introduced myself.
What did you make of him?
First impressions was, this is a really rich guy.
Arguments over money and the children were heated, but it wasn't just greed and bitterness that would lead to Ted Ammon's murder. According to Pelosi, Generosa discovered her husband's secret and was now out for revenge.
Ted had fathered a child, and Generosa had received the DNA results that was Ted's child. And that was the straw that broke her back.
This felt a special slap in the face to her because they had tried so hard to have kids, and indeed they had adopted twins from the Ukraine. You know, of course, as the old saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
Then what happened?
She would be in conversation with people saying, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch. I told Ted, Ted, she talks about killing you.
How many times did she tell you she wanted to kill him? Once, 5, 10?
10. And to me, it was all talk. I never took it for real until I found out it was for real.
So your position is that she killed Ted because she was enraged he'd had a love child by his mistress?
Absolutely, 150%. Here's my case. Generosa was my girlfriend. Mm-hmm. If Ted Ammon dies, what's in it for me?
You married her 3 months after the murder.
After the murder. At that time, before the murder...
You're saying that 3 months before you had no intention of marrying her?
I had absolutely no...
You married her 3 months later?
I had to marry her 3 months later to find out the truth of the murder. She could not tell me what happened in that beach house that night per direction of her attorney because there was no spousal privilege.
So by getting married...
She got spousal privilege.
You both did.
I didn't need spousal privilege. I wasn't there.
Maybe you didn't be. I'm just saying you got it. And one of the benefits of spousal privilege means you can't actually be brought to testify against each other, right?
Whoever killed Ted Ammon literally beat his brains out. Brain matter was visible. It seemed to indicate somebody's crime of passion. You know, somebody was really angry at this man.
But who was angry enough to want Ted Ammon dead? Danny Pelosi claims he has nothing to do with Ted Ammon's murder. He says it was Generosa, Ted's wife, who orchestrated everything. I don't know who the real Danny Pelosi is. And I'm trying to find out if you're somebody that, if it comes to it, has a potential for being very violent. There was a case where you were accused of smashing a glass into a barman's face.
That was dismissed because that was a lie.
You assaulted a cop?
No, that was also dismissed.
Right. But if people took a liberty with you, you'd hit them?
My average fight lasted 10 seconds.
How many did you have?
10, 15.
15 times you've been in a fight. That's a lot. So clearly Dan admits there's a propensity for him to be violent, and he has some criminal history to be like that.
Dan was a typical tough guy. He was streetwise, and he would not back down from a fight. But Dan is not a type of person that would lose his head and wind up, really hurting somebody or really killing somebody. Dan is not that type of person.
Danny was a troubled child from the very start.
My father was really abusive. My father would beat me. He would beat me. He did bad things.
His father was an ex-Marine who had done well for himself and was the manager of a local bank. Danny could not live up to this father's expectations. And it's still the subject of debate as to how hard that discipline fell on Danny.
My father was in the Korean War. My father taught me how to break your nose, break your jaw, taught me every pressure point on the body to disable a man.
Did he teach you how to kill someone?
My father taught me how to put you into a hold to kill you.
You know, people watching this will think you are saying on this. Dad teaches him how to kill a man with his bare hands.
I do what I have to do. If you're going to harm me, you better bring it.
I don't dispute anything you're saying, but this is a man talking very proudly about his ability to be very violent.
If you violate me, if you violate my family, guess what? You got to answer for it.
I mean, playing devil's advocate, it could be said that Ted Ammon violated you.
Ted never did nothing to me.
Well, he was threatening your world.
No, he wasn't.
Mr. Ammon had done some background work on Pelosi and knew that Mr. Pelosi had a couple of brushes with the law. And that was not the kind of person that he believed, should be around his children.
There were conditions of the divorce settlement, one of which was that she couldn't marry you or live with you for 3 years after the settlement.
Why is it a problem?
Because you wouldn't be able to live with her anymore, and that might cause your relationship to end.
Mr. Ammon was becoming upset that Danny Pelosi was in his kid's life. So Ted Ammon stopped the flow of money to Generosa.
As the divorce proceedings dragged on, the princess and the pauper, as the media labeled them, believed that Ted was trying to cheat them out of millions of dollars.
So as they came closer to this tentative settlement, they had found something of Ted Ammon's, most likely a handwritten piece of paper that had numbers scrawled on it, that caused Generosa in particular to believe that Ted is worth $300 million. He's lying to me. And Generosa lost her mind, literally.
Generosa was getting like a $25 million settlement from Ted, which to me was lotto. Okay, you're crazy.
But she held out for more, right?
Generosa refused it. Generosa was told not to settle for less than $100 million.
Their settlement, I think, was for $25 million. Not a drop in the bucket, but if you truly believe your ex-husband is screwing you and is hiding $300 million at the same time he's impregnating his lover, you're going to be a little ticked off.
Now you gotta remember, I told you there's two sides of Generosa, and I told her that. I said, you're nuts. I said, you're scorned.
And then what?
On Friday, the weekend of the murder, roughly 8:45, 9 o'clock at night, Chris shows up at Generosa's apartment in New York City.
Who's he?
Chris Perino was one of my employees that she hired to have Ted beat up. He says, it's going down. And I'm like, yo, you two, are you for real? So I'm like, oh, shit. She fucking went out to the house. What I saw was Generosa walked into the house with Chris.
Right, and you're watching this where?
I was watching that at my sister's house.
On the laptop that she had?
50 miles away. And now I see it. Boom. Ted Ammon was struck in the head with a .38 revolver. And that was all on the camera.
Danny Pelosi is now squarely laying all blame for this murder at the feet of Generosa Ammon. The problem is that she's dead. Generosa Ammon had breast cancer. She died before his trial even began. And perhaps that's actually convenient for him because she is not there to defend herself. And it's all hearsay.
You had no idea before the murder she was
knew.
sick?
Generosa knew.
She knew, but you didn't?
I had no idea. You can't make this up. What happened to you?
Well, actually, you could make it up.
You can't make it up.
No, but actually, Danny, you could make it up.
You can't make up this truth.
No, but if you were trying to concoct a very complex version of events which suited you, you could literally make it up. Because Ted's dead, Generosa's dead, you could make it up.
There are some bottom line, indisputable facts. about this case. Ted Ammon left New York City and came out for the evening to this house in East Hampton.
He had dinner that night at the Farmhouse restaurant in East Hampton Village.
He went to dinner alone and ordered tuna and Chardonnay. He walked his dogs at a East Hampton beach, and then he returned to the house.
His Porsche is in the driveway. He throws his billfold on the counter where it's still there with all that money, and then he went to bed. The killer set upon him in bed, got the jump on him, obviously.
Danny, did you do it?
No, I did not do it.
Because I can't decide whether you did it or not. I'm looking at you and you're a great talker.
I did not do this murder. I did not kill Ted Ammon. And everything I'm telling you, as bizarre as it may sound at times, is absolutely true.
The answer to who killed Ted Ammon that night in October 2001 should have been straightforward. Generosa, unbeknownst to her husband, had installed a secret camera system in the house to spy on him.
It was an enhancement of a system that was already in place that consisted of motion detectors.
So they could spy on him. I mean, that is really probably one of the biggest privacy invasions. But that's what they did.
Generosa wanted to see who he was having sex with. The beating heart of that surveillance system was a hard drive. Whoever committed the murder was also somebody who knew this thing existed.
So when the police went in, the hard drive was missing.
I removed it.
Why remove it?
Because Generosa is on it. I said, you're on tape. You're on tape. And then Generosa freaked. She says, you got to get it.
She told you to.
I'm worried about her getting locked up by the cops.
I understand.
I don't want this thing in my possession.
Right.
I throw it in a creek in Babylon where I know it is. God forbid, should I need to recover it to prove my innocence.
If that's all true, that footage exonerates you of any involvement.
We know that the hard drive is missing. If you're the murderer, you want to make sure nobody ever finds that for very good reason.
I'm saying if you were cynical, there's something on that footage which implicates you. And that's why you were so desperate to get back into that house and remove that unit.
No, because you're hearing this for the first time.
You say it's to defend Generosa's reputation.
No, stop.
I'm saying it could be to defend yours. If you were...
That's a good theory. I won't give you that. That's a good theory.
Yeah.
But now let me present my case. I've never had nothing to hide this whole time. I got no reason to lie.
People who have nothing to hide do not rip out units from murder scenes and throw them in canals. Why would you throw it in the canal?
And there's no safer place for that to be where I know it is. I know it's there. You can go there. You can get it.
No one's found it.
No one's gone there.
You sent ABC there with divers.
ABC went 3 blocks away. Hold on, let me give you the maps of where they went diving.
They rang you from the scene.
I gave them a map.
And you said to them, from what you're describing, that is where I put it. And then when they rang you later to say after a day's dredging, they didn't find it, you went, there are 5 other canals nearby, try those. It sounded to me like you were making it up as you went along.
Pierce, you're turning this interview into what it's not.
What do you think I'm trying to turn it into?
You're trying to turn this into that I'm a liar. You told me you were doing an interview.
I'm interviewing a convicted murderer who served 18 years so far.
A wrongly convicted murderer.
Right. Your position is you are an innocent man. I'm simply, when I hear the whole story, which is very complicated, and it involves sex and lies and deceit and 2 different worlds colliding, I'm trying to get my head round how I feel about this and whether I think you're capable of killing this guy, as you've been convicted of doing. And here's my problem. People do not go as to the lengths that you went to.
Right, but let me stop.
To hide evidence if there's nothing for them to hide. When you see your children now, they're obviously a lot older than when you were a free man. What's that like for you when you see them?
It's insane. My son is as old as I was when I met Generosa. Now, I have 3 sons and a daughter. I'm super proud of them. They've been through hell.
Do they all believe you?
Everyone believes me.
Your dad doesn't.
Me and my father had some bad blood. Now, my brother and me were thick as thieves. We were brothers. We were a 2-year difference.
Danny's father appeared to have a favorite son who became a New York police officer. In fact, during the trial, the father wore a blue ribbon on his lapel in remembrance of this son who got reeled into this case.
One of the more interesting parts of your story is that your father testified against you. As someone who's a father of 4 children, I can't even imagine what would lead me to do that. Why do you think your father did that?
My brother Jimbo was a New York City police officer. He had an idiopathic seizure. My father believed that all the pressure from the investigation was brought down on my brother.
Danny had asked his brother to dispose of a stun gun. That stun gun, or one exactly like it, had been used in the murder.
Ted Ammon had been brutally bludgeoned. The ribs on both sides, front and back, were fractured. He had extensive defensive wounds on his hands. And there were stun gun marks. So we had experts that we brought in.
A year after the investigation, they found out I bought a stun gun. Next thing you know, there's stun gun wounds on the body.
The taser that Dan bought, the prongs on that taser are exactly the distance of the prongs on Ted Ammon's body. What is the likelihood that that is a different taser?
The stun gun that I purchased was delivered to my sister's house.
Did you ever use it?
No, it was never even opened.
Right. But you don't dispute that you bought a stun gun shortly before this murder.
There is no scientific evidence whatsoever.
Okay.
I had the stun gun tested for hair, fiber, skin, even the original battery. From my stun gun.
It's coincidence.
What's coincidence?
That you bought a stun gun and there's a belief one was used in the murder.
But the stun gun that I purchased was like a toy. When you got hit with it, it was like getting hit by a spark plug from a lawnmower. It made you jump. And when the police questioned my brother about what I said to him and stuff like that, it's my kid brother. My kid brother ain't going to say nothing.
Danny's younger brother was incriminated by Danny's actions, and he died of an aneurysm in the lead up to this trial. And the father was devastated by this.
Pelosi's father felt Danny had deliberately taken advantage of his brother and crossed a line.
Danny's father didn't even wait for the local police to come question him. You know, he went straight to them.
His father was a very imposing figure, and he said, I love my son, but I had a very simple choice to make. It was either tell the truth or lie.
Can there be a greater betrayal of a son than to do what he did?
Oh, believe me, I was annoyed, especially when he said, I love you, from the stands.
I mean, the veil, immediately lifted from that facade of him sitting in his little blue suit. And you could see just the anger. I mean, it came right over his face like that snarl. And he's like, I hate him.
Did you forgive your father?
I refused to speak to my father.
After the trial? You never spoke to him?
I never spoke to my father again.
His father, in that exchange in the courtroom, was devastating, I thought. And the jury did too.
The father gave damning testimony to the jury, but there was worse to come from other witnesses. Interestingly, other people heard you confess. Tracy Riebenfeld, who was the woman you were having an affair with when you were married to Generosa, she says that you said, I bashed his fucking brains in, and he cried like a bitch and begged for his life.
Tracy changed her story 3 times.
He had asked this young lady to be his alibi during the weekend of the murder. She told them ultimately and testified that he asked me to lie for him. Her testimony was very believable, and the jury put a lot of stock in that.
James Nicolino, the contractor, said that you predicted, I'll bash his brains in while he's sleeping. Is that true?
James Nicolino, I screwed out of $10,000.
Okay, so he made that up too. He lied as well.
Yes, that's an absolute lie.
There's a lot of people. I mean, that's Chris Perino, Tracy Riebenfeld,
Chris Perino,
Kay May,
wait, stop,
James Nicolino. They're all lying.
Stop.
Are they?
Stop.
Right, here's my point. I'm just curious why all these people would say these things, why they would all lie to nail you. I don't get why they would all want to do that.
It's not all...
Why are you so bad a guy that they all want to make you rot in prison for something you didn't do?
Why didn't my defense call all my witnesses? People who had direct admissions from Generosa about the murder.
He came across like what he was, which is an antisocial criminal personality who takes no responsibility for anything that he does.
You never let me tell the whole story.
The welter of circumstantial evidence
I was convicted
means it's more likely you did it than anybody else, right?
Give me the floor.
No.
Give me the floor. We had the interview
Let me
right
take
now.
the floor back.
Let me stop you right here.
Let me finish.
Let me. Stop. Because my attorney said we don't have to prove who did the murder. We just got to prove that you weren't there. Because the DA's whole case is that you went out there all alone, did this crime, and left.
For more than 3 hours, Danny Pelosi has been trying to convince me that he's not guilty of murdering Ted Ammon.
Like I said, the last time I saw Ted Ammon was at 11:53 when he was blasted in the head and backed into the bedroom.
Right, and you saw that footage on the laptop?
I saw that footage Saturday night.
Danny is still not finished.
That's what time Ted Ammon was struck in the head with a .38 revolver by Chris Perino. Chris Perino then cuts a deal with the district attorney to get 6 months in jail if he says that he drove me there.
Christopher Perino was indicted for his role in facilitating the murder, helping to clean the car and what have you. Afterwards, Perino took it to a car wash and had the whole car cleaned.
She indicts Chris Perino for the crimes I should have been charged with.
I understand. Tell me exactly what you saw on the laptop.
What I saw was Generosa walked into the house with Chris. Then Generosa went up the stairs with Chris. I saw Generosa having words with Ted. She had a tennis racket and Buddy the dog. Buddy the dog went and started fighting with Ted's dogs that were out in the yard.
It's a bit too detailed, all this, Danny, so you can get to the bigger picture.
Then Generosa went up the stairs with Chris and the dog and the freaking racket. Ted was standing at the door and Dumb and Dumber were flanked on each side of him.
Who were Dumber and Dumber?
Dumb and Dumber, I will not reveal their names. I have to wait till I go to court.
Danny's had almost 20 years to get his story straight. He says he can identify all those involved in the murder. I want to talk about Dumb and Dumber, as you call them, people who have never been identified.
20 years later, this is just coming out.
Why don't you name Dumb and Dumber?
I'm going to.
I don't know why you protect them.
One of the guys are involved. One of the guys have connections.
Right.
And I got kids, I got grandkids. My kids.
Your version of events is that Generosa went with Chris Perino, and that Chris Perino was responsible for Ted Ammon's death, along with the other two, right?
Saturday night they go out there. They end up killing him. I'm not aware of it until Tuesday, that the man is actually dead. All right? I'm not aware of it whatsoever, that this man is actually dead. I'm not aware that while I'm removing the hard drive, this man is laying in the bedroom dead.
And what time did you go and remove the unit?
Monday morning. This is
Danny, did you go and check he was still there?
I seen him.
You saw him lying there, and you're telling me you don't think he's dead?
No. I thought they tuned him up again that morning.
Oh, you did another beating. Danny, come on.
No, don't go there. Listen.
Don't treat me like an idiot.
Please, don't.
You can't just toss
don't
stuff
talk
out.
to me like that.
Suddenly you say there was another assault on him, and you want me to believe that?
No, Pierce, this is what I want you to believe.
Sounds like horse shit, Danny, and you know it does.
No, it doesn't.
So I don't know why you're lying to me now, but that is a lie.
An issue for Danny Pelosi, too, is he gave sworn testimony already, not containing any of these details, and that he is a provable pathological liar. I honestly think he'd say anything, and now has.
So after I removed the unit, I see Chris and Dumb at the door. I'm like, yo, let's get the fuck out of here. And they look at me and he goes like this. I think Ted's going to see me because Chris is telling me shush. So when someone's telling you to be quiet, that's telling you Not that someone's dead. Be quiet. Someone's going to hear you. They knew he was dead.
So why is he going shush?
Honestly, Pierce, that's the $1 million
That makes no
question.
sense, does it,
That's
Danny?
the $1 million question.
No, it's not a $1 million question. It's crap.
They're telling me.
You're telling me Chris Preener's going shh, and they know the guy's dead.
I can't say that. I can't say that.
You just said it.
I'm telling you what I saw from my
You literally just said they knew he was dead.
Most of Danny Pelosi's new story now is really hearsay. And there's like no new physical evidence to back up this new version of events. So that's a problem for him.
Can we stop?
This part of the story, you've just made it all up. None of it makes any sense. They've gone to remove a body, which they then don't remove. Why?
They didn't remove the body.
Right.
They didn't do anything.
So what were they doing there?
I have no idea.
You didn't ask them?
I don't care. I didn't give a shit. I left them there.
Right.
Fuck you all.
Sorry, we're running out of cars.
I've got to be honest with you. This stuff sounds like crap to me.
This is
wait until we're back on camera, because otherwise we won't get your explanation.
Yeah, but no, it isn't plausible, but I want, honestly.
They're not giving you the chance to explain it. I've not taken a position, but I will challenge.
I want you to take a
when
position.
the stuff I think is nonsense, I'm going to say. This was the longest prison interview I've ever done. So long, in fact, that the crew is running out of digital cards for our cameras. Pelosi has literally talked us out of storage space. The main camera may be temporarily shut down, but Danny is still talking.
What you are seeing and hearing is what the public's going to see and hear.
There's nothing we're going to do to
but
make
I
you...
feel like you're jumping at me.
No, I feel like I'm getting to the nitty-gritty of what went on in that house.
Where you're calling me a liar.
Well, that stuff about... Sorry, but honestly, that stuff about...
But now,
them suddenly all rocking up in this room and saying shush, and they know he's dead, you don't. I'm entitled to go, hang on a second.
I can't have you saying I'm a liar. This sounds like bullshit, yada, yada, yada. I could see that fucking part getting there, and I look like a jerk off.
All I'm saying is I find that incredibly hard to believe. For me to get to the truth, you've got to convince me.
I was convinced they shot him. I was convinced.
It's mostly circumstantial evidence against you. But some of the things you've told me in this interview are completely new.
They are brand new.
Some of that stuff you came out with about the Monday morning, I don't believe it. So then it makes me think, well, how much of what you've been telling me is true?
I did not kill Ted Ammons.
But you did destroy evidence, which could ultimately, if what you're saying is true, actually get you off the rap.
In New York, Daniel Pelosi is facing 25 years to life in prison for murdering his girlfriend's millionaire husband. The Long Island electrician was convicted Monday, ending the real-life soap opera of betrayal, adultery, greed, and lost love.
I think this jury did an excellent job at considering everything and coming to the right verdict. How many words he had to say that matter were the words he said under oath. Anything a convicted murderer, blathers on and on about, is really more based in fantasy than reality.
This whole story is sort of like a Grimm's fairy tale, and the moral of the story is be careful what you wish for. It all spectacularly backfired, and now he's in jail for a really long time.
I don't know if you killed him or not. Only you know that. What's actually happened here is what I think the audience will say. And that might be enough for you, with an appeal, to actually get the conviction overturned. We'll see. Danny, thank you for your time. Thank you.
So the interview's over now.
The interview's over.
Pierce, I need to know, as a man, in your honest opinion, do you really believe I did this murder?
I don't know.
You got to have an opinion.
There were some interesting new revelations, but some of it made no sense.
So I brought all this fucking paperwork down here for nothing.
Safe trip.
All the best.
That's where we're headed right now.
So just finished the longest prison interview I've ever done. And I'm leaving it still not completely sure if he did the killing or not. But what I do know now is that he's prepared to lie to my face. And once someone is prepared to do that about certain parts of a story, and once they admit they destroyed evidence, when you put that together, you start to doubt almost everything they say. And that is a problem for him.
I'm Emily Compagno. As a lawyer, I've spent many hours with convicted felons inside the walls of prisons. Those are conversations and experiences you never forget. Now, Piers Morgan is joining me here in a slightly less intense environment to take you inside the killer interview. Dan Pelosi. Now, you say that you're still not sure about this one. Why? And what did it feel like to walk away feeling that way?
Well, I walked away feeling utterly drained because Dan Pelosi talked for 4.5 hours. We actually went through several camera batteries, which I've never had before. So some of these interviews, you get given a set 1 hour. If you're in Texas, you get 1 hour. But with him, I could be there as long as I wanted, and he talked, and he talked, and he talked, and he talked. And the more he talked, the more I felt he was kind of hanging himself. But, and it's a little but, I came out feeling exhausted, mentally and physically, but also thinking, I don't know for sure. I don't know why. He's obviously a terrible liar. He's obviously a rogue. He's obviously all those things. But did he actually participate in murder? I'm not convinced.
So how did that form an opinion for the jurors that had to make that decision as well? Did you feel empathy for them?
Yeah, he's a very plausible, fast-talking, charming person. Charm goes a long way with a jury. You would know that better than most, right? You've been in courtrooms. Bit of charm, bit of twinkle in the eye, honest about some things, and that allows him perhaps to be manipulative and devious in other ways. I thought he was a good liar, if there can be such a thing. But what I wasn't utterly 100% sure about was whether he actually was a murderer.
And what was it like when he walked in with a sack full of documents? What went through your head at that point?
To be honest, when he walked in with all these documents, my heart sank. I was like, I'm going to be here for days. Your heart sinks because a lot of these prisoners, they've had years to work out their alibi, to try and work out every possible detail that's in the public domain and have some explanation for it. And he was one of those people. He had an answer for everything. But he tripped himself up quite a few times. And so the question for the viewer is the one that I had myself, which is, he's obviously tripping himself up. He's obviously not being completely honest. But how far does that dishonesty go?
And did you feel he was trying to persuade you the entire time of his innocence? Did he want you to be a proxy for an appeal? Or was he simply using up the oxygen and enjoying center stage?
They're all innocent in prison. And they'll all tell you they're innocent. Very few. In fact, some actually, in my series here, did just admit it, which is unusual and fascinating in its own way. But no, he was one of those that you meet a lot of in prisons in America, UK, everywhere actually, where if you talk to them, they'll spend days telling you why they didn't do what they did. And almost all of them are lying.
6 of the 8 you interviewed, in fact, do maintain their innocence.
Yeah.
How is that possible? Statistically.
Well, it's not. So a lot of them lie, and my job with these interviews is to try and unravel the lies. And in a dream scenario, you let them hang themselves on the facts, where they contradict themselves, or they go down some alleyway of alibi, and you know where you're taking them, and it hits a dead end.
What was a successful moment in your conversation with Pelosi? Successful for you in sort of trapping and catching him in one of those lies?
It was little things with him, like he married Generosa 3 months after the murder because the spouse can't be called to give evidence. Stuff like that, where you're like, yeah, that stinks. What's his game? What's his motivation? And then little details about the sequence of events leading up to the death and what happened in the house and his kind of fairly outlandish version of other events, not really tallying with the facts. So I found with him that although he just talked and never stopped talking, it was his own words in the end over the whole totality of the interview which undid him.
There's a common thread often with the incarcerated and often with convicted felons. There's a neediness a neediness for human interaction, a neediness to persuade, to convince. And sometimes that is coupled with or contrasted with a narcissism or a psychopathy. What was his personality like to you in those ways?
I've interviewed genuine psychopaths who are incapable of empathy or guilt and things like that. And serial killers who will kill sometimes dozens of people and not even give it a moment's thought. He was different. And that's why I'm not 100% sure about his guilt. He's a kind of, what we would call in England, a Jack the Lad. Bit of a rogue, bit of a chancer, cheeky chappy, fast talking. You know, you meet a lot of guys like him and they're not killers. And the question for me was, is he actually capable of murder, of being a murderer? And I'm 99% sure. I'm not 100%.
In the American and the British criminal court system, that's enough to convict, I will say, 99%. Yeah. This played out as well on the celebrity set. You know, this was sort of a pop culture thread at the time. So do you feel that played into that verdict or his trial or his attention?
Yeah, look, this story had it all. You know, wealth, mansions, socialite, you know, the cheeky chappy, you know, it's all there, right? It's a great tabloid story. And I was a former tabloid newspaper editor. It's the kind of thing you just lick your lips and fill your pages because it's got everything you would possibly want in a juicy crime story that will titillate the nation. But in reality, it's real people and a real murder and a real story with massive repercussions. And I think when most people have watched this interview, I think most people will lean to thinking, yeah, I think he did it.